Welcome back to European Autocraft Studios. A few things. The wiring diagrams are coming. We're doing trying to blow up some wiring diagrams and make it so I can actually show you what's going on. We're going to start with the early one. Some have mentioned that they don't want to take time away from the car while we're doing the wiring diagram series. So I think what I'm going to do is we'll do some wiring diagrams on the early one first, and then maybe a little bit back on the car. And then when we do the later wiring diagrams that pertain to this car, we're going to be using the car and the diagrams to show you what's going on while we're taking more things apart. That might help. Show you the connectors, the color of the wires, where the wire goes to, comes from, all that. So that should be pretty informative. What I was going to do this time is remove the bell housing and expose the clutch, like we were going to do a clutch on this car. The clutch time on a turbo, we usually charge around 24 hours labor. Plus the clutch, that's close to $4,300 to do a clutch on one of these. Always looking for an easy way to do it so we can cut the cost. The crossover pipe needs to come off to get the bell housing off. Underneath the car, I think you saw last time we showed you the rust on that connector pipe over here. Those bolts don't want to budge, especially from underneath in that small area. I'm going to remove the intake and see if we can get it from the top, because the connector is right under the intake manifold right here by the turbocharger. So we're going to take the intake off now. We're going to do it anyways to pull the engine. We're going to lighten up the engine the best we can as far as size. You know, get it as small as we can so we can get it out without doing any damage. Sometimes it likes to catch the material, the metal here. And so I want to get the bell housing off and intake. See what else. We'll pull the distributor, show you all that. So let's get started on the intake. I'm going to first pull the injector rail off. These fuel hoses, they just have screw clamps on them, but I'm just going to lay that off to the side for now. So these are just 10 millimeter or 6 millimeter bolts, 10 millimeter head in the holding the rail on to the cam housing. This beautiful yellow cat diesel looking cam cover. Cam housing, I should say. The camshaft is actually inside of it. It's not just being covered by it. Covering by you know what I mean. I think. Anyways. These aren't even tight down here. Well. Normally the O-rings on the tips of the fuel injector seals would be stuck, but these are not. Surprise. Okay. Vacuum hoses. I'll show you all that later, how we put it together. These need a vacuum signal from the engine, the regulators, to work. Wiring harness. Normally they come right off. We're going to be replacing all these connectors because they're broken. I can show you how to do a nice repair on those. There we go. Missing the shield here. And these O-rings are fairly new. This has been apart and probably the seals have been replaced already. Okay, I'll pull the ignition wires. If you pull these wires, try to get underneath here. If you pull from here, they break right inside of here. These are kind of expensive, so you want to get under this, right under here, to pull those out. They come off fairly easy. Not so much on the coil. Leave that one. Sometimes you can get a blowgun with air pressure underneath this to swell it with air, and they come out. Distributor cap. Clockwise on that one. And clockwise on that one. Alright. Not too bad. Looks fairly new on the inside. Okay, now I'm going to get on the other side there and I'm going to remove, there's two Allen bolts back here that connect to the oil separator, oil filler, it's the same unit back there, and I'll take the throttle cable off. Maybe I'll take a few hoses off first. Use the longest screwdriver I can find. Not necessary, but entertaining. Okay. And we have a banjo fitting back here with these are 12 millimeter. One of these goes to the engine ECU, for the ignition ECU, for a vacuum signal. That helps with ignition timing and also boost pressure. And that boost pressure works with a map for the ignition timing, throttle response, everything. It's all calculated through a map inside the computer. Control unit. It's not a computer. Control unit. Okay. That's that. There's something else underneath. I don't remember. And we have what else? And there's one bracket here. I'll get to that on the other side. Welcome to the left side of the engine. All right. So we're going to remove the throttle cable. It's really frayed. I don't know if you can see that, but it's just coming apart here anyway. So we're going to replace it. So I'll just take that bracket off. I could have just taken this off here, loosen this, taken this nut off and slide this out, and it'll be easier to get to this, but I thought I would be able to get it a little quicker this way, because the bracket has to come off anyways. So, how many times have you had the screw too loose to put a ratchet on, but too tight to get by hand? Look at that cable's a mess. Okay. We also have the dipstick connected over here. Yuck. So I guess we'll change the oil too. I'm going to try to get it with a swivel. And probably going to lose this, drop this bolt. Alright, I'm going to try another trick. You take electrical tape, you can wrap it around the swivel. This swivel's especially loose, I use it a lot. That way it won't drop and make the bolt fall out. Let's see if I can save it this way. Oh, apparently not. Okay. There's the dipstick tube. The seals. Oh, somebody put silicone around it. That's just supposed to be an O-ring. Normally they don't leak. They fit nice and tight without any sealer. As long as the hole is clean and you push it down nice and snug. There's another issue here. So we might be looking for a dipstick tube. What's next? The bracket. There's a support bracket here in the front. Can I not drop this one? Let's see. Okay, that bracket is slotted. I'm going to leave that bolt in there. The bolt is probably, that bolt probably is so long it's all the way into the dashboard, so I'm just going to leave it. There's a slot in the bracket, so it'll lift up. Okay. Now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to just take the 8 bolts off. I think that's it. Take the 8 bolts off. Oh, and the 2 behind here, what I told you about. That's 6. Those are 5 millimeters. These are just socket head screws, 5 millimeter head. Those come right out. Now I'm going to the other side. Normally, we won't need these kind of this type of clamping. Zip ties everywhere. If the hoses aren't going to fit real tight in the rubber, we use another type of clamp that you pinch it tight. I'll show you those as we assemble the car. Right now we'll just get these out of the way. But even under pressure, these don't come off. Normally don't come off with the turbo pressure. This is all just old now and softer. Okay, so we're just going to take these 8 bolts out. These are 6 millimeter M6 also socket heads. Wow. Snug. Okay, they're all loose. So's the engine. On a sad note, if you watched the last video, you probably saw my best friend here took a tumble. Not sure if he's going to survive. He broke his neck. Very sad. I hope I can get another body for him. Body transplant. I don't know. Still works for now. We're going to keep using him. I think he would have wanted it that way. Just use him until he explodes completely. Maybe we can try to glue it. Or stitches. I don't know. Very sad. Anyways, we're going to use what's left of him to get these bolts out. Normally you wouldn't use an impact on a socket head screw, but they're already loose, and this is just really to motor them out. If you can stay in tight. Okay. Now I mentioned we might be replacing these connectors. I had forgotten we have a whole new harness for this car. Not new, but a really good one. If the connectors are good, we won't have to change them. So let's throttle position sensor. That's also a broken connector. And one vacuum hose. That's it. That's the bottom. Not much to it. Porsche made this curve like this so they're all the same length. Intake runner length is very important. So if they came straight, this would have to be a shorter pipe. So they bent it so it'll have the same length as the longest one. See, the back one has more of an angle, more of a bend to it, and that's to keep the intake balanced. So that works well. Porsche, they're just geniuses. I think most car companies do that, but the everyday passenger cars, it's not that relevant. But for performance, you want everything tuned perfectly. Now, what a mess. Now, what I was after is this. I don't know if you can see that. Down right there, there is the flange off the turbocharger. The bolts are rusted so bad. I tried to get them from underneath and it just isn't going to work. Maybe I can get this heat shield out of the way. Luckily, they didn't put the bolts in the bottom, the hardest ones to get to, so I think we can take out just these 2 top bolts that are left, and this heat shield will probably come out and give us some access. So let's try that. I somehow remember a plastic flange on this that the intake bolted down to. I was wrong. It's actually a separate bracket. So disregard the oil separator, oil filled tube combination being bolted to the intake. It is not. So sorry about that. Let's see if I can get in there. These are, I didn't bother covering the intake ports or anything. All of this is coming apart anyways. It's all going to be inspected. So if you're doing some work on the engine and not taking it apart, when you get the intake off, I would just tape these up real nice so nothing falls inside. If the valve is closed, it's not a problem. You can get it out, but if you don't know it's there, it gets swallowed up and causes massive damage. You can see my socket here. We had to make this into a special tool. I haven't replaced it yet, so it still works, but we use that for something else. I don't remember what it was. There's a washer there. For those of you that don't know, this is a water circulating pump for the turbocharger. Get this out of the way, and still going to be tricky. I mentioned I was a klutz with all this stuff. I am. There we go. Wow. This is going to get replated so it looks new again. We won't do that here. That'll get sent out. But that's the heat shield to protect the brake booster and the brake system from the heat from the turbocharger. Now back to this. These turbochargers spin at such a high RPM, they take a long time to slow down. So when you shut the car off, they're still spinning. What Porsche does, I think a lot of car manufacturers do it. I mainly see this on Porsche though. They also use engine coolant to run through the bearing housing in the turbocharger. This pump runs for 20 seconds after you shut the car off to help cool the turbo down from heat soak. That way the oil doesn't coke up and turn to sort of crystallize inside there and prevent oil to be able to flow. This works great. Sometimes you shut your car off, you hear this thing buzzing out here for about 20 seconds, maybe 40 seconds, and that just prevents us from heat soaking and cooking that oil. That's why these turbochargers last so long. It's just a great design. That relay is in here that runs this. We'll get to that later in the wiring diagram section when we do that. Well, right now we can get to this. Maybe I'll take this coolant pipe off that we were just talking about here, and we can get to the bolts on that flange. So, well, let's try that. I'm going to loose coolant, I think. Oh, the whole fitting is turning, so I have to counter hold that with, looks like a 22 millimeter. Is it 22 or 24? 22. Very difficult to get a wrench on it. It helps if the wrench isn't already pushing against it. Yeah, we're losing a little bit of coolant out of there. Look at the rust inside there. We'll clean all that out. Okay, now we can see the flange. This is the flange we're going after. And after all of taking this off, I still think this is easier than trying to get it from underneath. Maybe I'm just getting old, I don't know. But this seems to be the easy way to do it. Those are 15 millimeter heads on M10 bolts, and the nuts have a 17 millimeter head. I think the 15mm head is there smaller so you can actually get a socket on it. If not, it would be too close to the pipe. Let's see what happens. Oh my gosh. All right. The nuts are turning, of course, they're expected to be. But I'm going to actually take this fitting off and give me even more access. It's already loose. This will give me even more access. Yeah. Let me try a socket. Yeah, the socket might work. It's shallow, but it bites the flank just right. Look at that. Okay. Yuck. Yuck. Now I can actually get a wrench on these nuts here. The turbo's holding the wrench for me. Back at the dealership, it was easy to do this from underneath. The bolts weren't really as rusted as they are here, and we're able to get them off fairly easily. But now these cars are so old, and it just seems easier to get it from here. Or I could just take the engine out with it, but that would be no fun. Too easy. Then you wouldn't get to see all these tricks. One. That broke loose easy. Helps to have a ratchet with a swivel, so I can get in there like at an angle. Got it. No. Still one going to be difficult to get to. This side won't be bad. I think we'll go underneath and get the one on the bottom here. That one's probably the only one accessible from the bottom without too much trouble. So let's take a look underneath. All right, we'll show you this bolt here in a minute, but right now I'm trying to get the breaker bar on the nut. There's very little room to swing it. So what I'm going to do, I don't know if you may already know this trick, I don't know, but if you pull the socket off and just rotate it 90 degrees, now you have a little bit the difference between one flank to the other, half of that length back. And it gives you a little more room if you have to bite the socket. You'll have to try it to know what I'm talking about. It's kind of hard to explain. So if I can get a grip on this, get my other hand up in there with this, and hold that nut and break that loose. Nope. Yeah, I might have to put some heat to this with the torch. I don't know. You're probably wondering where Anthony is. He's out skiing in the Swiss Alps somewhere. I don't know when we're going to see him again. He's always out doing something, whether it's an Austin Healey show or off skiing somewhere. But what a pain in the neck. Every time I... Yeah! Well, okay. He's back. Yeah. Yeah? How was the trip? Good. Good, yeah? Went downhill? How long did it take you to get there? A long trip. You don't know? You know the Swiss Alps aren't in America, right? Okay, well good. You ready to go to work? Yeah? All right, get that bolt out for me. Well, when you're rested and relaxed, we'll try again. Next week. You'll be in next week's video for sure, now that he's back. Okay. Thanks for coming by. Yeah. Scared the crap out of me. All right, I'm going to get the torches set up to heat that up, and we'll be right back. Well, it was pretty hot under there. With the car engulfed in flames, it was kind of hard to see, so we didn't bother videoing that, showing you the video on that. All he did was heated the nut and it came off fairly easy, but really tight quarters in there. Just so you know, I use a breaker bar because with not having the ratchet head on there, there's a lot less flex, so I can be a little bit more accurate in this tight area. It works really good. Once the nut is loosened and I can actually get a ratchet in there, it's less stress on the ratchet, and then you can move it. But it's so much better to start with a breaker bar. So let me get back in there on the top bolt. This one we shouldn't have too much trouble with. This is the last one. Still very difficult to get to, but we can do it. Well, let me try to rotate it first. Try to rotate the whole bolt and nut assembly. Okay, it's turning okay now. So now we'll use the ratchets. Sometimes it's easier if the bolt just breaks. We're going to replace the hardware anyways. But 10 millimeters is pretty hard to break unless it's rotted through. Still a little warm down there. I also picked up the hardware I dropped while I was down there. The bolts are now out of the exhaust flange, if you want to take a look. Now we'll go back up and take the other half of the pipe off of the triangle flanges underneath. Those bolts might break, they go all the way through, so it's not a big deal. So we'll see you back underneath. Alright, it looks like I'll be able to get them off with an impact swivel. I'm going to break them all loose, and then I'm going to try to use a gun to get them out the rest of the way. This one isn't too bad, so maybe they're not going to break off, I don't know. Maybe one or two, maybe none. A little tricky to do by yourself. But when you have an assistant that is always off at car events and ski trips, I guess that's what you're stuck with. Alone. Yeah, let's get him to rotate first, and then let's see. I know a lot of you guys are asking for longer videos. This is probably going to be one of them, but I do notice that most views are the videos are only being viewed for no more than 7 minutes. So I'll make longer videos and we'll see if you really watch it. We're going to do our best to do that. All right, let me get the gun on those. Okay, don't fail me now. Oh boy. So if you want to leave a comment on how long you'd like those videos to be, I'm thinking maybe a half hour, if we can get our editing department to do them for that long. Big editing department, there's like 35 people editing. Looks like NASA when they're editing these videos. Crazy how many people it takes. Big company. No, it's just one. This hardware we don't need, so. You may have noticed this little bolt sticking out of here. This was someone's attempt to stop this from rattling. There's some insulation inside of here, and it's pinched onto the pipe. A lot of times these will just start rattling, and you can stake them in certain spots to stop them from rattling. This looks like it worked pretty well. It just snugged it all up. So it's crushed in here a little bit more than normal, but it looks like it stopped the rattle. I think we'll do something a little nicer, maybe tack weld it or something like that, or spot weld it. One more to go, and we will have access. Gonna fall. And there it is. There are steel seal rings inside of here. In here, it's a rolled ring that compresses. Those have to get changed every time. Those are very expensive too, just so you know. I've reused them in the past, but for a good seal, you should always use a new one. All right, come take a look at our bell housing now. That has clearance to come out. Okay, now we're back at the top. I need to take the speed reference sensors out, and those are the ones that give the signal to the engine. I keep calling it a computer. It's really a control unit. The engine control unit for timing data for the injectors, and the ignition control unit for the timing for the ignition. One of them is designated D, one is G. I don't know what that means in German, but the D, if you think of dentist teeth, that's the one that goes on the ring gear for the teeth on the flywheel. That'll give you an idea. That's the one it goes back into. On the turbo, there's also a spacer, and that prevents it from contacting the teeth and ripping it apart, which I did once, not putting it in. It just wound the wiring around. It broke it open and spun the wire all around the flywheel. It was a disaster. Don't forget the spacer. There's also a ground wire up here for the battery, bolts right to the bell housing, and then there's some smaller ground wires for the other individual grounds for the harnesses and whatnot. So I'm going to take those out now. This is the timing valve that we were talking about in one of the other videos. This is what controls the boost pressure, the regulator for the wastegate. This controls vacuum to the wastegate using another map that is for calculating fuel injection, how much pressure, how much fuel you need for so much pressure. If you disconnect this and it doesn't function, it goes full boost. Now that sounds like a lot of fun, but the problem is then the fuel pump, the boost pressure cutout shuts the fuel pump off when the boost goes too high. It's just best to have everything working properly and enjoy the car the way it was made to be done. I have a feeling we're not going to be doing that with this car. The owner wants to do a little more, so we'll see. For now, I'm going to get these out, and we'll talk about that later, the other stuff. Sometimes these sensors get stuck in the tube. I'll show you that. Now, these are the bolts for the sensors. It gets the head of the bolt higher up out of the sensor, so you can actually get a socket on it. There was a technical bulletin on these cars. They would kick back while starting. And what was happening is the sensors were picking up EMF from the starter and tricking the computer into thinking, tricking the control unit into thinking that it was receiving a signal for top dead center, and it wasn't. So there's an aluminum sleeve that put down to shield it, to shield the EMF throughout the entire body of the sensor. That's the DG one, the D1. The G one is right here, and they're moving, so that's good. There's the spacer. It's about 2 millimeters. Without this, this rubs on the ring gear and it shreds it. while trying to start it. It will start and run until it breaks the wiring, and then it stops. But by then, it's already wound around the flywheel. Just keep that in mind. That was a bad day. Oh, that was on a turbo. Oh. This one doesn't want to come out. Oh, such a mess. We're going to make this so neat back here. Right now, it's just a disaster. These aren't original sensors. They look like they've been replaced, which is good. We'll just reuse them. It comes apart. The clip is missing out of here. All right, we got pretty far. We didn't get the bell housing off this time like we wanted to. We're running really long. That sensor doesn't want to come out of that housing, so I'm going to take the whole housing off. We're going to end up doing that in the next video. We didn't quite make it, but I hope you got to see a lot in this one. We're going to try to make them longer for you. Wiring diagrams are coming up. We're still working on that. And like, subscribe, please keep it coming. Spread the word. We need a lot of subscribers, and we're doing great so far. And I really appreciate the input. Like I said at the very beginning, we want to make this for you guys. So you tell me what you want to see, and we're trying to make it happen. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time. And we'll get that clutch out of there before we pull the engine, I promise.